Hi and welcome back everybody. Today's video will be about flight plans, how you take a look at them, what's important, what is not important. I will go step by step through it. So if you want to know how pilots read their flight plans, keep watching this video and I will show you step by step. Please enjoy. Alright, we're sitting here in Paris and I have a short flight plan to Frankfurt just to demonstrate to you. We won't be leaving the ground because this is just to demonstrate to you how we look at flight plans and what information is important to us. So I come over to the tablet and go to flight details and we can request the sim brief data, and you can see this is our flight Paris, Frankfurt. There we go. And if we hit this key, we can see our flight plan here. And let's just get started. So our flight from Paris to Frankfurt, you can immediately see it here. Paris to Frankfurt. These are the 4-letter ICAO identifiers for the airports. And you can also see, if we start here, this is for American Airlines, flight 8259. And the current date, like I talked about it, Paris, Frankfurt, Boeing 777-200. And this is our tail number, November 754 Alpha November. And of course, you would cross-check that you are in the correct aircraft and it matches. That's a good first start. So we can see here OFP, Operational Flight Plan number 1. And then we can see a whole lot of information. Not all of this information is equally important, but there are some key features which are very important. So you can see straight off here, we can see Paris, Frankfurt, you can see the 4-letter and the 3-letter. So Charles de Gaulle and Frankfurt, and you can see these are our times. So 1850 Zulu is our scheduled off-block time. And you can see up here in the corner, it's 1818 Zulu. So we got 32 minutes until we have to be ready and we have to push. And then they gave us an estimated 20 minutes of taxi time until we are airborne out of Paris. During peak times, it can be way more than 20 minutes on the ground. Then we got our estimated flight time from 1990 to 2011, so 1 hour, 1 minute. This is our scheduled arrival time in Frankfurt, and they schedule us to be at the gate at 2019. So these are the scheduled times, and the most important for us right now is that we can make it off the gate at 1815. Then if we come down here, we can see our airplane, Boeing 777-200ER. We got Rolls-Royce Trent 8092 engines. So because some carriers, for example, American Airlines, they have different engine models, you want to cross-check if the correct engine is basically shown here on the flight plan. Then we can see here, these are some really important numbers. Our maximum weights, basically this is the maximum allowable takeoff weight, landing weight, and zero fuel weight. And then we have our estimated weights, and the estimated weights of course cannot exceed our maximum weights. So we can see estimated takeoff weight is 375,237 pounds. And if we subtract our trip fuel, we're going to land with an estimated landing weight of 361.451. And then we have the zero fuel weight. Zero fuel weight, like the name implies, means there is no fuel in this weight number here. So this is just passengers, cargo. And then if we add our fuel, we will end up with our takeoff weight. So, and the important thing is, like I said, you want to check if those numbers do not exceed the maximum allowable weights. Then we can see here some general information like the cost index 159. This is company specific. Every company does this differently. So you just use what is on the flight plan. You can see ground distance 312 miles, air distance 354 miles, great circle distance, so and so on. Usually I take a look at the ground distance here, and then we can compare it later on to the FMC, because it should equal this number approximately. Then we have an average wind component of 0.35, 55 knots, and minus 41, the wind component. Average fuel flow is 13,450 pounds. Yeah, nice to know. Not all that important. We can see we have an alternate airport, it's Munich, and we have some flight level steps on our way to Frankfurt. So starting from Paris 210, then at point Valek 230. This is pretty low. I mean, we got a distance of 310 nautical miles. In real life, I would request something higher as soon as we are airborne. You can see dispatcher remarks nil. This is good. Sometimes there might be MEL items on the airplane, minimum equipment list, meaning there's some equipment which is not properly working, and you could still fly with certain items not working, but they have to be listed in the MEL, and the MEL sometimes gives you certain restrictions. So MEL item could be anything on the airplane not working, and you're still allowed to fly with this inoperative item according to the minimum equipment list. And for example, if you have a spoiler pair on your wings not working, the MEL will give you a restriction. It would allow you to fly, but it will give you a restriction, for example, maximum flight level 270, maximum speed 270 knots. This is just an example. These are not real figures. Then we see our planned fuel. This is a very important section. You always take a look at the required fuel. This is one of the most important things. And right off the top, you can see block fuel here in Paris. We're scheduled to depart the gate with 31.9. So 31,857 pounds of fuel we need when we leave the gate. This is our block fuel. Then we can see our trip fuel to Frankfurt. Time 1 hour 1 minute equals 13,786 pounds. Then we got contingency fuel, alternate fuel, final reserve fuel. I have a separate video on that topic, how much fuel do we have to fuel and what the different types of fuel mean. Then we have the minimum takeoff fuel. This is basically block fuel minus taxi fuel equals the takeoff fuel. So you can see if we add minimum takeoff fuel, 30,457 plus 1,400 taxi fuel, it is equal to the block fuel. And of course, the captain can decide if he wants to take more fuel than the 31.9. Maybe we're expecting thunderstorms on our way to Frankfurt, and then, for example, we add another 2,000 pound, whatever it might be. If we scroll down further, we can see FMC info, final reserve plus alternate. This is the information for the FMC, like it is stated here. And 13.4, we would round that number up usually. 13.4 is our reserves, which we would enter in the FMC page, and I will show you later. Then again, we have trip plus taxi fuel, and no tankering recommended. Tankering means if the fuel in Paris would be way cheaper than in Frankfurt, maybe it would make sense to fuel a little bit more here in Paris, so that we don't have to pay the higher price in Frankfurt. But obviously, of course, if you put more fuel in the fuel tanks, the airplane will burn more fuel because it's heavier. So dispatch would have to calculate this through and tell you, hey, tankering is recommended or not. Today, it is not recommended. Then you see the dispatcher information, you got a telephone number and the pilot in command, PIC name, and you would have to sign the flight plan as the captain to verify that all this information here is correct and you accepted the flight. You can see alternate routing to Munich. We take a look at this later on. Here's a field MEL CDL items, so minimum equipment list, configuration deviation list. So the CDL is for missing parts on the airplane. Maybe there's a small panel missing and the CDL states, yes, you can still fly, but maybe you have a fuel penalty of 200 pounds extra an hour, something like that. Then here our routing from Paris to Frankfurt. It is scheduled that we depart 08 left with the Ranux 5 hotel departure, and then you can see all the waypoints leading us to our arrival into Frankfurt, IMCOM 1 Delta, onto runway 07 right. Of course, the runways can change due to wind, etc., but this is the scheduled flight plan. You can write down your clearance here, or you could in real life if you would have if you have this as a printed version, you could write down the ATC clearance, and then we can see operational impacts here. So this is in case of unscheduled differences. For example, you can see weight change up 1.0. So if we weigh 1,000 pounds more, our trip fuel, we would need to adjust our trip fuel by plus 11 pounds. So not a lot. And there's no time penalty. If we would weigh less than 1,000 pounds, our trip fuel should be adjusted by 24 pounds. The same goes for a flight level change. If we fly one flight level higher, we can subtract 119 pounds from our calculated trip fuel we saw up there in the fuel section. And here you can see flight level change down. If we would fly 2 flight levels down from our scheduled flight level, this is our fuel penalty. We would be required to add plus 254 pounds. So this gives you a good representation what happens if ATC gives you a lower flight level and how much fuel adjustment you would need. Also here you can see with the flight level it's plus 1 minute. Here we can see again our estimated times out, off, on, in. So like I talked about, 18:15 is our push time, scheduled to be in the air at 19:10, 2011 in Frankfurt at the gate 2019. Block time 1 hour 29 minutes. If you take 18:50 Zulu until 2019 Zulu, the difference between those times is the block time. So block time is from leaving the gate until arriving at the gate. Here you can see the weight section. We're scheduled with 180 passengers. Estimated cargo or bags 9.9, so 9,900 pounds. Payload of 44.1. Zero fuel weight 344.8. This is our maximum allowable zero fuel weight, so we are way below that because it's a short flight. The same goes for the fuel. This is our maximum allowable fuel, 130.4. We're only scheduled with around 32, so it says possible extra 98.5. If we would require to because of weather, etc., there wouldn't be a restriction in that regard. Same goes for takeoff weight. This would be scheduled takeoff weight, and this is the maximum takeoff weight we can depart Paris. This is not the maximum takeoff weight the 777 is certified because it's something around 652,000 pounds. The takeoff weight here is more restrictive because we would have to look at the maximum landing weight, and the maximum landing weight is 460,000 pounds. And you can see here our landing weight 362 and our maximum landing weight 460,000 pounds. And 460,000 pounds is actually the structural limit for the airframe. So this number here, let's call it the Paris restricted takeoff weight to Frankfurt. So this number here comes to existence through this number. So it's the maximum landing weight. And we have a trip fuel of 13.8. So if we take 13.8 plus 460, it is equal to 473.8. So that is why our takeoff weight does not equal 652,000 pounds. It sounds a little bit confusing. I can make another video on different aircraft weights and loading, but this gives you a general idea, and usually you have a look at the weight section and just make sure that you're below the maximum restricted weights. Then we can see our flight log, and we can see most critical MORA. Minimum off-route altitude is 4,800 feet. It's pretty flat when you fly from Paris to Frankfurt, no high mountains. So when I see this number 4,800, it tells me I can easily descend to flight level 100 in case of an emergency, and we do not have to worry about any terrain. We can see here, this is our flight log. We start at Paris, obviously, and then we track our times. I will show you later. And then we have a estimated fuel on board and actual fuel on board, and this is our fuel burn. So right here you can see 1,400. This is our taxi fuel, because if we are at the runway in Paris, we're scheduled to burn 1,400 pounds, and this is our scheduled takeoff fuel, 30.5. And you can see if we scroll down here, some random waypoint Nepal, This is our scheduled or estimated fuel burn overhead the waypoint Nepar, and this is our estimated fuel which we should have in our fuel tank. And you would write down the actual number in the fuel tank when you are overhead this waypoint, and then you can cross-check. Do you have more than this number? This is good. If you have less than this number, this is bad because you obviously burn more fuel, and then you have to check, can we still make it to Frankfurt or do we have to divert? At the end of the flight log, we can see some wind information, and you can see for our climb, these are the flight levels. Flight level 350, wind 040 degrees, 65 knots, and the outside air temperature -55 centigrade. And those winds, we can load them into the FMC automatically via ACARS, but if you wouldn't have any ACARS, you would have to insert those winds by hand. And it takes a lot of time, but it helps the airplane calculate more precisely the fuel burn upon arrival. So you can see each waypoint and the associated winds, and for descent and climb as well, you can see the winds. And we can see the airport weather list. And this is really important because you would never depart or dispatch a flight without checking the weather first. You can see Paris, Frankfurt, our flight and the date, and you can see airmeds, sigmeds, tropical cyclone sigmeds, volcanic ash, no data available. So significant weather, no volcano ash available, which is good. And then we can see our departure, airport Paris. We can see the weather here. So we can see the date, 21st of March at 1800 Zulu. So 40 minutes ago. The wind was coming from the north, 9 knots, gusting 23 knots. And the wind is variable between 340 and 120. There is CAF-OK, no clouds, so 13 degrees, dew point 5, QNH 1014. And basically, this is the current weather, gusty winds from the north, and this is our forecast. So here we can see from the 21st of March at 18 Zulu until the 22nd of March, 24 Zulu, the wind 10 degrees, 8 knots, CAF-OK, maximum temperature 15 at 22:15 Zulu, and the lowest temperature 4 degrees at 22:05 Zulu. And then probability 30% temporary from 05 Zulu until 08 Zulu on the 22nd of March, 4,000 meters and mist. So weather good enough for us to depart. The same goes for our destination in Frankfurt. Here we can see weather from 1750 Zulu, because in Germany you get the ATIS at 30 minutes intervals, and ATIS is published at 20 and 50 after the hour. So 1750, and we can see winds 040 degrees, 12 knots, CAF-OK 11 degrees, dew point 03, QNH 1014. And the TAF or the forecast from 18 Zulu until tomorrow 24 Zulu, we can see we got winds out of 050 and 9 knots, and visibility more than 10 kilometers, scattered 4,000, prop 30, temporary between 18 Zulu and 23 Zulu, shower rain, and broken 2,000 cumulonimbus clouds. Maybe some clouds we have to fly around, and maybe the runway is gonna be wet, but other than that, nothing too crazy. Then let's check our alternate airport in Munich. Same time as here, 1750 Zulu. We got winds coming from 060 degrees, 5 knots, CAF-OK 6 degrees, dew point 3, QNH 1013. And the forecast, light winds, good visibility, scattered 4,500. At 1 Zulu, the visibility will go down to 3,500 meters and mist. And basically we can ignore this because our scheduled arrival time was something around 20 Zulu. So we can disregard all this weather for tomorrow because it will not affect us. Then we come to the NOTAM, Notice to Airmen. This is a list of things which are different than usual at the airport, things that are broken at the airport. So I will just give you an example. We can see here, Trigger NOTAM, restrictions on use of Aerodrome Paris, Charles de Gaulle, rehabilitation and closure of parts of taxiway Foxtrot and Echo. The dates of phases are confirmed by NOTAM, blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of information, but there's obviously some information which is quite important. If there's a taxiway or runway closure, we want to know about it. And of course, there's always NOTAMs for departure airport, arrival airport, and alternate airport, and en route alternate airport if you would have such. So here we can see Munich, and there's the list full of NOTAMs again. Even here for the FIR, flight information region, you can see there is some stuff going on, and you can read through it so you have a good idea of what is going on. Okay, we're at the end of the NOTAM list. You can see we had to scroll down a lot because it's a lot of NOTAMs as usual, and there we can see we got some charts. So our route is depicted here from Paris to Frankfurt, and you can barely see the alternate Munich. And we scroll down here to a significant weather chart, 1 of 2, and you can see moderate icing expected from base to flight level 100. And also check the validity at 18 Zulu, 21st of March, from flight level 100 to 450. Here we can see the general winds. So we have headwinds along our way to Frankfurt. So these charts are for different altitudes. You can see flight level 180, 240, so and so on. And here we can see a vertical profile departing from Paris, top of climb, all the waypoints. And you can see the winds into Frankfurt. You have a picture, you got the terrain depicted here. And this is the tropopause. So today we're cruising way below that. Flight level 200, which seems way too low, but as you see, flight level 400, this is where the tropopause will be. And that's about it for the briefing and the operating flight plan. And now we will make a short setup of the FMC so you can see which data I will take out of this flight plan. And I'll scroll back up here to the beginning of our flight plan. And now we can start with the FMC. Usually we start on the island page. We make sure Boeing 777-200, we got the Trent 89-2 engines, and we would make sure that we have an active navigation database, which we do not have. And now enter inertial position. So we go to the position init page, copy our GPS position, and there we go. We go over to the route, and this is really easy here. We can just go over here and request route. You can see SimBrief route, Paris, Frankfurt. We click that one. Also, we can set our payload. SimBrief payload set, fantastic. Set our fuel. And you can see 31.9, and the fuel is already set. And then we go to select route. You can see Paris, Frankfurt. There we go. Usually takes some time. Route uplink. We can hit load. It will take a second to populate the route into here. And there we go. We got our flight number in here. And now we should have all the waypoints. There we go. 103, page 103. So there we go. We have all the waypoints, and it's telling us descent uplink is ready. Wind data uplink, perf init, so and so on. So now if we would go over to our flight plan, and now we have our route, Paris, Frankfurt, and now we would check that we have the correct waypoints. So starting at Ranux, then Valek, Lipny, Limgo, Ranux, Valek, Lipny, Uniform November 858, yeah, Limgo, so and so on. You would check all the waypoints, then you can activate it. And if you hit departure arrival, we can just load the expected arrival. 08 left, Ranux 5 hotel, so 8 left, and Ranux 5 hotel, execute. Arrival Frankfurt. We can see IMCOM 1 Delta 07 right. So 07 right ILS. IMCOM 1 Delta. And let's take the Delta Foxtrot 654 transition. Execute it. You can see our distance is 374. and yeah, 312, 354. So it's a little bit more than on a flight plan. Maybe we have a discontinuity, we will check that later, but that gives you a basic idea. If we go to our legs key route data, we can see wind data, load. Now it's requesting the wind data, execute it. You see the W for wind. And now we have all the wind data I showed you on the flight plan before for every waypoint. So we do not have to manually enter all the wind. Click the VNAV page, go to the forecast on page 3 and load our descent forecast. There we go. Now we have the descent forecast and our winds. Route key, performance in it, and you can see reserves 13.3, flight level 390, cost index. We can accept it, and now we have most of the FMC already set. The performance numbers, they would come later as soon as we would have the final load sheet. So that concludes the video. I gave you a brief overview how to read a flight plan, what the important parts of the flight plans are, and hopefully was able to help you and you learned something new in this video, and I see you on my next video. Thanks everybody for watching.